So now in the second part, I want to talk about the main functions of this synth, which are probably the same than in any other synth. And these are to create your basic sound. And like I said, you will see you can do various things with it and the sounds will change drastically and you can really produce very interesting sounds with just a few mouse clicks and you do not need a lot of knowledge. At first, I want to give you an overview. You see, this is one module for one oscillator and it's called Oscillator 1, and there you have the same a second time and the same a third time. So there are 3 basic oscillators. There's a sub oscillator which is of course for producing low notes, and there's a noise generator and a ring modulator, and all these sounds can be mixed here in the oscillator mixer. If you want to use anything in Retrolog, you've got to switch on that blue button. Otherwise, nothing will happen. So you see, even if I press a sound, you cannot hear anything because the sounds in a synthesizer, or at least in this one, will be created by an oscillator, and if these are all turned off, you can't hear anything. So inside this oscillator, you have always the same functions in these, and some of these are really easy, and I will start off with these ones. One I already explained, it's the octave button. In every synth you have 3 buttons that will make your keys sound in a different pitch. But while this button, I already explained, is for your overall sound, so whatever you do, this button influences the whole sound. This one is slightly different because it just works for this oscillator. And if I switch on a second one, I can do something completely different. And these 2 will be active at the same time. So what that means is, check out this. I have one synth that I have activated and I'll pitch it real high. So if I play this key, it sounds really high. If I switch it off and use another one and pitch this one low, the same key sounds really low. And now if I switch on both of these, the same key sounds really high and really low at the same time. And that is one of the most important and basic features and can create incredibly powerful sounds, because if you switch on more than one, you can mix different sounds already and you will only play one key but have a very vast and powerful and wide sound with this function. So you can change the octave like this. But you can also change half steps, so semitones. You can see here I can change semitones up and down for my oscillator, and I can even go finer than that. So fine tuning is in cents. Cents means 1/2 step, or so 1 semitone is 100 cents. So I can change I can make really tiny changes to my sound. And what do you need that for? Check out this. If I use more than one oscillator and I put these in different octaves, my sound becomes much stronger. If I now tune one of these, a certain way up or down, a simple chord appears, even though if I only press one key. If I now start to put in something more, I can even play simple chords with one key, and if I start to like maybe detune my synth, then the sound gets even richer. The more I detune it, the weirder it gets. But sometimes, if I only use octaves, a slight detuning can enrich my sound much more. So that are these three buttons. The other one, which is really most basic and important, is your waveform. Every synth produces a sound in his oscillator via a certain waveform, and the basic ones are these, like a sine wave, a triangle, a sawtooth, and a rectangular. And that means your sound will sometimes change very drastic if you use a different waveform. And these sound like this. You see, the sine wave is a very soft sound. The triangle is a little more detailed and sharp, has more overtones. The sawtooth, we already heard, has way more overtones. Already sounds like some kind of distortion on it. And the rectangular one has a very versatile sound depending on where you put your shape knob. So this knob appears if you use the rectangular wave, and then you can create different sounds. Depending on your shape button. The rectangular sound can be very different and versatile. I think sometimes like a combination, different combination out of these three. Try out different ones and use what you like, but most of the time you would maybe use a sine wave for a sub or a very fine and not that aggressive sound, obviously. And like the sawtooth would be much more like a typical lead sound. If you've chosen one of these, then you can still go into a type menu that will change the wave type of the waveform that you've chosen down here. So there is single wave and different combination of more than one. So synchronized, crossed, like an XOR combination, or multi waves where you can choose how many ones you want, and you can then detune these against each other. That means, for example, I have one sound chosen, I use a multi-wave type for it, I put in a certain number, so one sounds like this. And if we put more than one in, you can already hear that the sound changes slightly, but if I detune these against each other, then you will hear that the sound changes a lot. And it became much wider and impressive and powerful than before. So every type that you choose will change the sound of your basic waveform a lot. And you should just go through these and check out which one you like for the sound you want to create. And most interesting is, of course, to use different ones for this oscillator and for that and for that. Like this, you can create very interesting and powerful sounds just by using these basic functions that I just showed you. If you want to use a very deep and fat and powerful sound, you probably want to switch on your sub oscillator as well. There you don't have a lot of options. You can only choose between 3 different waveforms, and that's about it. The noise generator produces, like the name says, just a noise. And it is white or pink noise with a bandpass filter as another option. So what would you need that for? Sometimes, like I said before, we want to have really disturbing sounds, and that could be interesting for you. Also interesting would be if you use effects, and if you do not use that sound very strong, so just a little, you see it adds overtones or high frequencies, and it gets a little more stronger and weird that way. In the end, you would of course go to your mixer buttons and say, well, I want to have a very strong sound in the mid, so I use that one louder because I have it in the mid now, and that one is, I don't know, up high, so I want to have that softer, and I want to have a lot of bass frequencies, so my bass oscillator and the sub oscillator I want to have very loud, and like this you would put different sounds of these together. So just to show you real quick what I mean is, you see I have an instance of Retrolog here, and in this window you can hear the basic sound that you will have if you start with this synth. So just the default setting sounds like this. What I made on this page is I left everything exactly in the default settings. And what I did was I used different octaves. I slightly detuned some of these. I turned one knob to produce a different note and used different wave types. So there was really nothing special. You can see I let all of these in the same waveform. I didn't put in any special work at all. I used here a multi-layer with a slight detuning, here just the basic setting, here just the basic setting. And except for that I turned on the delay a little and the modulation effect, this is what you get with this basic knowledge, and compare it to this. And there was really nothing special, except for, like I said, a little effects that I turned on. I only used a few different of these basic knobs to come up with a pretty interesting sound, which is worlds away from the basic default sound that you get. So I think that is a really good starting point, and you have thousands of opportunities to combine sounds here and go in very, very different directions depending on your waveform, your wave type, how many synths you use, and if you want to use one of these buttons for tuning in different octaves, semitones, or fine tune, like detune your sound. So I hope right now you did understand how these buttons work, and I can assure you, you will find the same buttons here as well. You will find your different wave types, you will find your waveforms, you will find octave and sub, a noise button, you will find tuning in semitones or cents. That is exactly the same in all the other ones as well. Octaves, half steps, fine tuning, overall level, your wave type. Once you know how these parameters work, you can do a lot of things in various of the synthesizers that you will find. So I hope you like this. Check out some of the other videos, subscribe. I will make another video where I will explain the rest of the first page, and as well as the arpeggiator inside, retrolog, and other synths as well.